And we are live. Welcome, everybody. It's podcast time. 11 o'clock Central Europe time, Treasury Masterminds podcast time. I'm really pleased to have Tom Callway here from Kyriba. And the topic of today is Treasury without the buzzwords, straight talk on TMS and AI. And that sounds very ChatGPT-ish, but this is really what we're going to talk about. Tom is the VP of Product Marketing. So that doesn't mean we're going to talk about very marketing show. We're going to really focus on the product part in your title, Tom. Thanks for being here, Tom. There are live listeners here. We're live on LinkedIn. We might get some audience questions on the right-hand side. They have the option to post those questions. When they come in, if they're relevant at that time, I'll try to ask them to you. Otherwise, we'll push those audience questions at the end. Before we dive into it, Tom, can you quickly introduce yourself, please?
So Tom Callway, the accent probably gives it away slightly. I'm from the UK. I live in West London. I've been with Kyriba for about 18 months or so. But I've been in technology generally for, 25 years or something like that. Kyriba was an opportunity that I couldn't say no to, particularly its investments in AI, which really drew me to the company.
Okay, interesting. Before this, you've been with Ubuntu, Rancher Labs, Susi, now Kyriba. Quite a tech journey. So what does that help being now in Treasury now, but specifically in product marketing? Because you're definitely not a treasurer. Your focus is on the product, really.
Yeah. Well, so it's my background is in open source software. Maybe some of the people on this podcast don't know what open source software is, but it's been running your internet websites and mobile phones for well over 25 years. It's essentially a licensing approach to software, which is the antithesis of proprietary licensing. And I think, back in the day when the GPL license was invented by a guy called Richard Stallman, who's very interesting, you should look him up if you're interested, from a broom cupboard in MIT is where he lived for many years. But he invented the GPL license, which was a way of actually exposing the code of certain projects that he was working on. It was a very effective way of driving community engagement within the development of these projects. So some of the most famous open source projects are things like Linux, for example. So I've worked for two Linux companies, Ubuntu, which is a company which is a distribution started by a guy who a South African sort of billionaire who, having made lots of money in security certificates, decided to go off and get involved in open source software. So Ubuntu is probably still the most popular Linux desktop distribution, but also very popular as the kind of Linux distribution of choice on AWS and some of these other cloud providers. And then I work for SUSE as well, which is a German-based company that has a Linux distribution very closely aligned with SAP traditionally. I got to SUSE through the acquisition of a company called Rancher, which was very big in the Kubernetes ecosystem. So Kubernetes is something that, again, is very under the covers for most people. Certainly in Treasury, they don't really know what that means. But again, it's been running many of the SaaS platforms that you use for your Treasury activities on a daily basis. It came from Google originally. It was kind of the infrastructural secret sauce that allowed them to scale as quickly as they did, from just a search engine into doing Gmail, into doing G Drive, and all these other products that they've been able to produce. At the back of that was a container orchestration system, which they eventually open sourced, called Kubernetes. And that was a very, very big deal about 4 or 5 years ago. And SUSE picked us up, and I worked for SUSE for three or 4 years. And then when the management team eventually ended up joining Kyriba, I went with them. So that's kind of been my journey. I think open source software has been a hugely sort of disruptive to the technology industry. Forcing the big players like Microsoft, Oracle, and companies like that to really accommodate the methodologies of open source software, particularly when it comes to transparency, roadmap transparency, being very open about, performance metrics and stuff like that. The importance of community in co-creating brands was something that, has really come from the open source industry and readily adopted by businesses now when they're building brands. It's all about community and co-creation. And that, I think open source has had a part in doing that, finding champions within your community to drive adoption. Again, that's very I've been doing that for 25 years. It's pretty cool. Also emphasizing things like open standards as well as a way of ensuring interoperability and vendor neutrality, and really focusing on building trust between vendor and customer. Again, that's something that's very much of the open source ethos, which I think is very transferable to what we're doing here in Treasury. So yeah, it's a different background for a Treasury vendor, but I think certainly relevant.
Yeah, that makes definitely sense, and we love community at Treasury Masterminds, definitely, and definitely co-creation. Of course, Kyriba is not fully open source, but open source also means listening to clients, doing it together. What do you want? What do you need? So, what's one product launch you've done in the past, or maybe at Kyriba, that taught you the most about listening to clients?
That's a really good question. I'm very fortunate to say that it's the product that I've been launching for the past year in a phased approach. So we haven't, and it's TIE, or it's our agentic AI capability that we launched the prototype of that in May at Kyriba Live. We've recently announced the commercial availability of TIE at KLX in London, and from November the 15th we're going to start rolling it out in Europe and in North America. Now, TIE is really, probably the main reason why I wanted to join Kyriba. I was so excited about the opportunities around not just generative AI, but agentic AI, which is what TIE aspires to be going forwards. But it's the proverbial Swiss Army knife. Build an AI capability in a platform, a Treasury platform that's been around for 25 years. Where do you start? It is like a Swiss Army knife. What are the use cases that you focus on that are going to deliver the most impact? And so the way that we addressed that was for the first time, to do something called co-innovation. Of course, we'd run cabs and things like that in the past, bringing customers together and getting their views on things. But co-innovation was slightly different, much deeper engagement at the very beginning of the product development process, doing, with this sort of fast iteration approach, starting small and iterating quickly, doing that with customers through their guidance and asking them, well, look, this is the wireframe. What do you think? Okay, so now where do you see the lowest hanging fruit from a use case perspective? And just engaging with them very, very regularly in order to do that. And honestly, I was a bit skeptical that that customers would have the time, the capacity, and the resources to be able to dedicate to the co-innovation process for TIE, but my mind was blown, honestly, by the size of the businesses that really felt it was in their direct interest to guide the development of a capability in Kyriba, which they think is going to be very, very significant, strategic for them. So we've now got over 20 participants in the co-innovation process. It's continued beyond, obviously, the original prototype, and now it's part of that ongoing sort of Q&A and testing that we do with them. And we've had, companies like ServiceNow, for example, which I'm sure, most people listening to this have probably heard of, a very, very significant player in the SaaS market, a hugely valued customer for us. They've been, instrumental in helping us identify what those use cases are. American businesses, the Koch Industries, is the, US's sort of second largest private company, has been very much involved. A company called Sodexo, which is a French company, which I wouldn't be surprised if you hadn't heard of them, but they've got over 500,000 employees, huge business. They've been very strong proponents of TIE, where we're taking it. So they're just a sample of the types of companies that have been involved. But TIE is a customer kind of co-created, co-innovated capability, and the success of that engagement in terms of delivering a product that we know is addressing the most critical use cases in its first iteration. We're going to be using it strategically in our product development process going forwards. It has been very successful.
Okay, very cool, very cool. We will talk AI a bit later. I definitely have questions about that, and buzzword or not, we're definitely going to talk about. But let's start with the basic treasury management systems. The listeners here, they might have one, they might not have one, and if they are looking for one, the market for TMSs is quite crowded. There are quite a few. I'm a consultant myself. I sometimes get the question, very wrong question though, Patrick, what's the best TMS? The very simple answer is it depends. But my question to you then is, how do you differentiate yourself in this crowded market? Do you want to be different as the rest even?
Well, yeah, we have the fortune, I think, of being a very well-known brand in this space, been around for 25 years or whatever, and I think longevity matters, particularly in a market where, treasury and finance people are sort of conservative, often with a small c, as we say in the UK, when it comes to onboarding technology. It really helps to know a brand and trust that brand, and I think that we've developed that trust over the years through, a number of different ways. We're very well known for our connectivity at scale kind of story, our huge library of pre-existing bank connectors, ERP connectors, our very, very mature API story. We're known for, the reliability of connectivity and coverage is kind of one of the main drivers really for customers coming to us, because we have a global presence there. We're not just focused on one region. It's truly differentiating for us. We also have, we talk about it being a TMS, and of course that's the kind of acknowledged category within the industry. And if you look at IDC, it talks about treasury and risk management. That's great, and we're very fortunate to be the leader of the leaders in the last IDC MarketScape report. But I think we do more than just treasury management. We have a single platform that covers risk and payments and liquidity, which means that there's fewer silos and better control across those different disciplines. So that's very attractive to customers, because they know that they can grow, they can onboard at a smaller level and then grow the platform as they grow themselves. As we sort of the brave new world of AI as well. I think in terms of differentiation, we decided very deliberately not to choose the route or the routes, depending on which side of the Atlantic you're on, of most of our competitors, where they were just sort of leaning into third-party large language models to drive their AI capabilities and their platforms. It's certainly the most common way of doing it, but for our customers, having surveyed them and having very great relationships with our customers and the co-innovation process and that I discussed, was that they weren't really happy about their data, that they were trusting to Kyriba to have any opportunity for that to leave the platform. We're talking about some of the most proprietary, confidential information in any business, and they didn't want that being farmed out to sort of black box third-party LLMs, and even though there might be legal terms or whatever that stops the the sharing of their data for training purposes or whatever, that just wasn't good enough. They were very conservative about, and I suppose concerned about how their data was going to be used by an LLM if it left the platform. So that we saw that as both an enormous concern that we had to meet, but also a very important point of differentiation. We've decided to embed the large language model inside of Kyriba, so that all of the processing for the LLM happens on the platform. It doesn't leave Kyriba at all, and so and that's the foundation of TIE, our agentic platform. And that's very differentiating, I think, because it really it sort of speaks to this trust, this investment of trust that customers have made in Kyriba over its 25-year existence, and we didn't want to lose that, and so we've that's that trust, and so it's kind of directed the way in which we've built out our AI platform. I think that another area is the ecosystem, and the size of our partnership ecosystem is truly differentiating. Whether it's with banks who are white labeling our product, with other fintech players, or the alliances that we have with some of the one of the largest ERP players in the marketplace. Well, consulting companies, training companies, whatever it might be, that is very differentiating for us when when we're being considered by treasurers and finance people generally, having that opportunity not only to have a mature platform, which is kind of like a one-stop shop for risk, payments, and liquidity all in one, but also having that extensibility through the ecosystem partnerships that we have is really important.
That makes sense. And in talking to clients in that survey, maybe do you see a trend there? Why treasurers are choosing you? Is it mainly the connectivity part? I guess it's not because of the AI they're choosing you. Is it the payments? Is it simple cash visibility why they choose you, or is it all of the above?
It's all of the above. I mean, I think connectivity traditionally, if you're putting aside AI, which I think is something for the future and will drive a lot of interest because people realize that they really have to have this if they're going to be competitive and keep their teams focused and everything else and highly productive. But that's one for the future. I think the key point of differentiation has been the extensiveness of our globalized connectivity story. It's unmatched, and so that appeals to folks in Europe and America, but globally as well. So that's really been the most appealing, I think, the key differentiator.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, then a treasurer comes in and says, okay, love that story. Let's go for Kyriba. You can connect to all my banks. But then comes implementation. The always nice part in between. You've chosen a software. It's not live yet. You have to implement it. Capacity is a thing. I hear conversation with treasurers where the implementation is still the challenge. From a product side, how do you help your clients with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just a product sort of issue. It's also a kind of a geolocation issue as well, because the kind of the compliance environments, the political environments in which they exist can often impact the speed with which a treasury platform can actually be deployed. So it's kind of not just about the product, but you're absolutely right. We're talking about a platform that's going to come with the backbone of your business, and it's not just a case of downloading and install a double clicking and it all happening automatically. There is
will be nice.
Well, wouldn't it just? There's a significant amount of resource and expertise required in order to make Kyriba work for you. That said, of course, we've invested a lot of money in trying to focus on that implementation being more about configuration than bespoke development. I think maybe 20 years ago, onboarding a bank would take a long time, depending on where they were, and a lot of custom development was required and all that kind of stuff. But not anymore, and that's why connectivity is so important, because we've already pre-built that. We can roll out those connectors, and it's just about configuration really, with a minimal amount of sort of bespoke customization. So we're really focusing on configurable templates rather than individual customization through development. I think an accelerator to that as well is capabilities like, for us, Open Format Studio, App Studio, where we are we're enhancing the ability of Kyriba to very quickly, using AI capabilities, to very quickly connect into different platforms, and making that as low code as possible through the use of AI. So we've thought about it from a connectivity perspective, from an integration perspective as well, and making that as smooth and as easy as possible. But also just in terms of the maturity and expertise of our consulting operation. That 25 years, you learn a lot in 25 years about what makes a successful product or product rollout. And the expertise that's required in terms of the phasing of that, focusing on the quick wins within the first 30, 60 days or whatever, and then expanding, understanding how to deliver value as quickly as possible to customers, allowing them to, or helping them, build out baseline KPIs and track return on investment, month on month after that. giving them the expertise that they need to be able to build out that sort of wrapper so that their deployment is successful. It's something that we're very expert at doing as well.
Yeah. So it basically means you have a vision where the treasurer can do more himself in a way. He might have to teach himself. I had a panel last week at Eurofinance, also with Kyriba in it, and the client Bolt who uses this app studio.
Yes.
And the treasurer said, you know what, I might use a bit of ChatGPT, trial and error with the coding. But I can do the coding myself, and that's quite impressive. Yes, it's a bit of a learning curve, but we're moving a bit away from Treasury into a bit more coding. But the coding is just a means to get the results which I need, and the results there was API connectivity between different systems and
Yes.
file exchange, and Kyriba clearly helped that treasurer with solving that problem himself without needing you or an external implementation partner.
No, indeed.
I agree.
And that product utilization piece is a really, really important component of how AI can work for our customers. It's not just about productivity gains, which are kind of, sort of low. It's easy KPIs really to focus in on. We'll become more productive. We can do more with fewer people and all that kind of stuff. But it's also product utilization. In terms, we're talking about really complex platforms, whether it's Kyriba or a competitive platform or whatever. These TMSs do a lot of, there's a lot of complicated workflows that, before AI, requires a lot of training, certification, and so forth. I think that's not going away, but AI really helps to accelerate the adoption of these things like App Studio, for example, API sort of integrations and things like that. It's only really possible because AI is doing that initial heavy lifting, getting you sort of 70-80% of the way there first, and then you can focus on the 20% at the top. It's an exciting change, and also another treasurers can add another professional string to their bow really by getting into this sort of stuff.
Definitely, and it's not that hard to learn. I think the key takeaways last week was like start small, build out from there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel in 1 week. You just start with thinking about what material I use for the wheel. No, definitely. I want to talk more about these feedback loops you have with clients. You probably had a request somewhere where you think, okay, this is a surprising, weird request coming in. What's the strangest request you ever got from a treasurer where you think, okay, I'm not sure about this one?
I'm not sure whether I've had any strange requests, to be honest. I'm not a treasurer by profession, so maybe it sort of passes me by. There's a lot of increasing emphasis on low or no code kind of capabilities when it comes to API integrations, payment controls, and things like that. I think that there is an appetite for that type of approach. Also, forecasting, but particularly AI enhanced forecasting. Treasurers are I think wonderfully skeptical when it comes to how those forecasts are put together. And they want explainability, and so we've spent a lot of time ensuring that trusted AI, as we've sort of branded it, isn't just about taking the LLM and embedding it in the platform. It's also about ensuring the explainability of the insights that are provided by AI, for example, and their auditability as well. And so that's something that I wouldn't say it's surprising that there's been asked, people wanted that, but it's certainly something we've been, responding to customer demand for. Other things that really sort of big pain points, maybe at the end of the quarter or whatever, the amount of effort and resources that treasurers put into building, sort of scenario modeling and reports and things like that for board members. It's a huge lift. And that was one of the first sort of use cases that our co-innovation customers wanted us to address, having a way in which to reduce the time and effort from maybe weeks to potentially minutes through AI was something that was a very popular request from our co-innovators. So
Makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. We have to do more with small teams or smaller teams. Not saying we're getting smaller, but treasury teams are generally already small. So we have to
Yes.
work very efficient. And yes, we are conservative. We can never lose money. That's goal number one. But of course, we're also looking ahead. We're trying to predict the future here. I think it has been on the Treasury's agenda for the last 20 years, forecasting, and definitely forecasting accuracy. Curious on that one. Do you see differences then for clients in Asia, US, Europe? Do they have different requirements? Or are they all the similar treasurers
There's
forecasting?
lots of similarities. I mean, of
Okay.
course, there's lots of similarities, and it's easy to sort of generalize. I mean, but if I was pushed, I would say the US, there's a lot of emphasis on payment fraud controls, real-time payments, liquidity yield, that kind of thing. In Europe, there's SERP optimization, cash pooling. Asia, there's sort of lots of multi-entity kind of complexity there, local rails, FX controls, e-invoicing is big there. That kind of thing. But of course, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, but also differences. Apparently.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Now let's dive into this AI. We really want to pick your brains on it. So my first question: AI buzzword. What's hype? What's real?
Well, yeah. AI is a reality, and to our customers, and I think it's been met with and we've done surveys on this, and we've talked about this sort of trust gap between excitement for what it can do for them, but a kind of an understandable kind of concern around security and compliance, and the gap between that, we talk about it being the trust gap, but it's real. It's coming. I mean, some of our customers right now at this fairly nascent stage of the sort of AI adoption, many of them are saying we don't want AI at all. They're just not ready for it from a corporate compliance perspective, and so we have to respect that. But a lot of our customers have been doing AI or machine learning kind of activities within Kyriba for some time, whether it's fraud detection, anomaly detection, forecast accuracy, forecasting and predictability and things like that, data cleansing, narrative reporting. They're real sort of real benefits of AI. I think where the biggest hype, there's two areas of hype, I think, that need to be wary of. This idea of a fully autonomous treasury is not going to happen anytime soon. It's just like, yes, autonomy will increase to the extent whereby you'll have these agentic platforms where you'll be able to create highly bespoke agents that kind of operate within your corporate compliance guidelines and things like that. So you can sort of trust them because you've built them, they're highly specified and customized for your environment, and they'll be able to make recommendations and provide insights that you will feel much more sort of confident in what they say than just a kind of a generic sort of chatbot type thing. But there's always going to be, and the term is the human in the loop. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. There is not going to be a future anytime soon of where you just sort of switch on your agent, it just goes off and does everything for you, and you have your morning cup of coffee. It's going to be a two-way interaction. You become more efficient, more productive, and it will make recommendations and insights within a sort of a trusted environment, because you've helped create that agent for your own environment. But the ultimate decision making is still going to remain with you as a treasurer, and your expertise is just going to be slightly redirected, from into more sort of strategic activities. I think as a result of it doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. the other kind of, and it makes a great demo, and I've been to a number of different events where you get sort of sales engineers sort of talking commands to their AI agents, and it always wows the audience, but I do think it's window dressing, honestly. I don't think there's no sort of Star Trek Treasury happening anytime soon, but it makes for a good demo. But that's hype, in my opinion, and fun hype. It puts sort of smiles on people's faces, but that's about it.
Yeah. So you're really saying the biggest use case is with the simple ones, the bots doing automation, the RPA enhanced bots, machine learning plus data cleansing. In a panel last week at Eurofinance, I polled the audience, and they said cash flow forecasting is the biggest use case. I'm not sure if that's the biggest use case. It's probably the biggest use case they want it to work, because that's the biggest pain point. And I had a treasurer on my panel who said, no, my biggest use case is really these simple automations, data flows, optimizing them, getting them in a data lake, cleansing the data, and improving the accuracy. What's your opinion?
Well, I mean, it's all of the above, and we're still very early on in that early adopter. If we're talking about the sort of the adoption curve, I think we're still fairly early on, and different treasurers or different treasury sort of organizations are approaching AI in different ways with different needs. Some are more bullish, and so maybe they'll go for some of the fancier, cash flow forecasting, whatever it might be. Whereas some are more skeptical, and they want to maintain control, and so maybe they're a bit more sort of tactical in where they're using it. And it really depends. And we haven't, the sort of AI is a long way from sort of being normalized in terms of its usage within Treasury, and so you're going to have some fairly big differences based upon the makeup of the individual teams. I think what's going to be really important as we develop these agentic capabilities, certainly within Kyriba, is this idea of being able to help customers enforce guardrails on the way in which their agents operate, because allowing them to build out those sort of compliance guardrails, governance guardrails, so that they know that their agents will operate within those guardrails. I think that that's going to help to maybe level out people's sort of currently fairly sort of disparate levels of confidence in its capability of doing different activities, if they know that they can customize those agents relatively easily for their own specific environments, and that will just build more confidence, and then they'll in using AI, and they'll probably be a bit more adventurous in the use cases that they apply it to.
Interesting. I talked to some treasurers last week, and there was one guy who said, it's going too fast. I can't keep up. I'm still looking into simple large language models, integrating ChatGPT and using ChatGPT in my company and designing the policy. And now you're pushing agentic AIs on me. I have another learning curve. In a poll there, I saw, last year Eurofinance poll that there was people are looking into it. Now about one quarter, 25% was experimenting with it. But now you have a new feature. How can treasurers keep up, Tom?
Maybe leaning into their AI tools to help educate them. I mean, it's a somewhat flippant answer, but when we have these, we had it with SaaS, for example, years ago, when we went from everything being on premise, and every company had a air-conditioned sort of server room in their basement, and very loud machines going whir all the time, and what is it, 20 years later, that those things don't really exist so much anymore, and it's all on AWS and Google Cloud or whatever, and it's all SaaS delivered. And back then, trying to convince companies, Salesforce was an early advocate of SaaS, but it struggled to convince companies that SaaS delivered models were going to work. The browser capabilities were there to support it. That security was going to be as good, if not better, than having stuff on premise and those sorts of things. There was lots of skepticism back then about adopting highly disruptive technology, and we're just seeing exactly the same thing with AI, with some people who are going all in and super enthusiastic about it and doing all the courses and educating themselves on how it can be used, and others who understandably are skeptical. There's a lot of kind of macro noise about AI, outside of Treasury, just in society, and how it's sort of, changing our lives, sometimes, not for the better. And I think that probably leaks into the way in which, treasurers will view AI coming into their professional environment. It's just like a healthy skepticism, and it's going to vary depending on who you are. But over time, I hope, and I'm trying, I'm a glass is half full kind of person, that it will normalize and the tools will become more reliable, more customizable and easily customizable, from a guardrails perspective. And that will help level out some of that initial adoption anxiety. Based upon what we've seen over the past 20, 30 years in terms of new technology coming on board, I think that's going to happen. The same pattern.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. So you're saying it's your role, maybe my role, our role at Treasury Masterminds at Kyriba, to keep educating these treasurers. Hey, these are the use cases. This is what you can do. You don't need to jump on it immediately. You don't have to be a first adopter, and not everybody is, and need to be. Wait for the use cases, then evaluate. Does this make sense for my treasury as well? Start a small project. Don't go all in immediately, and start 1% better every day.
And build your confidence, yeah. And companies like Kyriba, I mean, our customers have access to huge amounts of training material. Back in May, we gave all of our customers free access to Kyriba Elevate, which is a really high quality training resource. And of course, as TIE is rolled out to our customers, there's going to be Elevate courses that they can go on for free and sort of help to educate them on how to, they call it prompt engineering. How to construct prompts that are going to result in accurate results. But it's not just about if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. Actually constructing a prompt that is specific enough to allow you to get the right information, the right result from that prompt. It's a skill, and customers need to develop that. So companies like Kyriba are creating the courses to help our customers actually, on that journey. The more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah, I love it, Tom. I love the way you give that away, but call it collaboration, feedback from your clients, product development together. What do treasurers want? What do they need? And you decide to build it. This co-creation, making it better together, and then sharing it back with the community, because not everybody needs to be this first mover and adopt it immediately. Especially treasurers who are conservative, they won't jump all on it. I do have only 2 questions left. So for the audience, if you have burning questions for Tom, now is your chance. So next question, Tom. Let's predict the future. Let's look 5 years ahead. I think if we only look 2 years backwards, we didn't even have the word agentic AI.
No.
We were experimenting with simple prompts in ChatGPT. So 5 years ahead, what can Kyriba do? Do we still need treasurers? You give that answer.
Yeah.
What tech do we have?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a greater emphasis on sort of real time, on API first treasury, instant cash, those sorts of things. It's going to get faster, more instantaneous, more flexible. So that's definitely going to happen. I don't think it's going to take 5 years. I mean, we're pretty much there already. AI will eventually, even for the naturally skeptical, will become integrated into everyday workflows, and more recommendations will become, it will make recommendations, and actionable recommendations, not just about insights. But again, 5 years, that's a long time in technology. So I think that's going to happen much sooner. But I think, like I said before, however things play out within this profession, in treasury and finance profession, that human in the loop sort of assurance isn't going to go away anytime soon. We're not going to be in a position whereby we just rather than having a treasury team, we've developed a series of bots which we just allow to do their own thing autonomously. That's not going to happen. It's going to augment and the capabilities of treasurers, allow them to offload some of the more mundane type stuff, certainly initially, but then really allow them to focus on the more strategic decision making, and that can only be good for the treasury profession, honestly.
Yes, I agree. I speak to too many treasurers who say, I'm too busy to innovate. And that's such a shame, because they are small teams. They are too busy with the day-to-day, but they don't, they're in this loop. They don't have the time to innovate, to optimize, to automate. So they're not even getting there. And I like that idea that we are still needed. We're doing less day-to-day stuff because we have more automation, but we are checking the bots. We might be doing much more in a day than we are doing now, just because we have the capabilities to do suddenly much more, because it goes faster, real-time aspect. I think we brainstormed on it in this preparation. Do I need to be 24/7 suddenly because everything is real-time? I need to be real-time. I can't do that. Maybe I need a bot who's real-time, which I sometimes trust within limits. And during the day, I do a bit more checking. Let's see how this plays out. I like your vision, Tom, of the future. But let's plan another podcast in 5 years and then see where we are then.
Yeah. There'll be laser beams and things like that, in 5 years' time, who knows.
Great. So my final question, and that's a bit of you might be biased, but there might be treasurers here who don't have a TMS yet. They are looking for one. What is your advice for treasurers when evaluating a TMS?
Yeah, I think you just need to start with the outcomes you have in mind. Define like 3 to 5 measurable KPIs. So that could be, days to visibility, it could be fraud incident rate, it could be time to close, yield uplift, whatever it might be. But define those small number of measurable KPIs and then go out and choose a platform that can prove it will deliver on those KPIs within about 6 months and has references to match as well. It's like buying anything, honestly. Know what you want. Define what that is in terms of its measurability, and then go out and look for platforms that say they can do it. That time to value is going to be within 6 months, and that they've done it before. And obviously at Kyriba, I'm pretty confident that we can help them.
No, definitely, and small addition from my side: those KPIs might be different for each treasurer.
100%.
And that's why I sometimes get the question, Patrick, which is the best TMS? And you get the question back, it depends, because it depends on what you're looking for. So fully agree there, Tom. I do see we have an audience question. As a treasury analyst, how can we upskill in the domain? As you said, in 5 years, it will be the mainframe. Upskilling now is of essence. It's really about education and
It is. Yeah. I mean, I can only speak for myself in terms of customers and what's available to them when they become a Kyriba customer. There's obviously certification and things like that. Then there's a very sort of well-established program of certification that we can get customers through. But then there's Kyriba Elevate, which is the free training that we provide, which is actually integrated with the platform as well. So you can enable it sort of contextually within what you're doing within the platform, and you can enable Kyriba Elevate within the platform. It's very cool. But I think I think my biggest use case personally for AI, even outside of Kyriba, is just educating myself on different aspects of my own profession, whether it's product development or whether it's growth marketing or whatever. I'm using AI all the time as the most convenient source of education. Of course, you need to be wary that sometimes you're going to be like Wikipedia. It's not always accurate, but just if you are able to build out prompts that provide you with concise, accurate feedback from or answers from the AI tool, it becomes the most useful source of education that you could possibly find. It's extraordinary, yeah.
No, interesting. So it would be funny to have an AI certified treasury analyst.
Well,
Something like that.
I think it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen as the capabilities mature. I mean, particularly as you're building out sort of agentic platforms, so customizing your own agents and things like that. I think there's going to be, again, if you're exposing those agents to your financial data, you're going to want to make sure that they're well-tested agents before you deploy them internally. And I think that that's going to be a new skill set that people are going to have to develop, and certification in doing that, I think, is a natural progression. So absolutely.
I fully agree. And especially as a junior starting out now, yes, you still need this treasury knowledge, basic, how does cash management work? What is a cash pool? How does it work? But it would certainly help if you have a bit of, and you don't need to be a full Python coder, but understand a bit of code, or at least learn how to generate code with your App Studio, maybe.
Yeah, indeed.
I always say, I do drive a car. I don't know exactly how an engine works, and I don't need to, but I know the basic concept on how an engine works, brakes and gas. I think you need that in Treasury as well. If you start using AI, you don't have to fully understand the AI, but the basic concepts of how does an AI work, think, etc. You need to know those. So dive into it. There's a learning curve, yes, and it won't be from 0 to 100 in a month. But educate yourself every day, every week, a bit on it. Play around with it. That's what I'm hearing a lot. And then you will have your learning curve there, and also increase your value as a treasury analyst, as a cash manager,
And that's
and
crucial.
later as
That's
a head of treasury.
From a career perspective, if you don't add it to your sort of skill sets, and its usage, it's going to put you at a disadvantage. I think it's something that is inevitable eventually. Yeah.
Great. I'm out of my questions, Tom. I'm really glad you were here. Kind of a different guest, and not always this treasury talk, more like product talk, of course, AI. And thanks for sharing your story from your personally, but also the Kyriba story and what you are doing. For the audience, if you still have questions left and haven't asked them, connect with Tom on LinkedIn, per email, send them to me, and I will forward them. But Tom is happy to answer all your questions. Just reach out to him and have a follow-up discussion there. Tom, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Patrick.
Amazing talk. Audience, thanks for listening in, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Great.
Thanks all.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
And we are ended. Great.